yourself and how you got involved into starting the Fit Mess podcast.
Sure. In just 30 seconds. Okay. Well,
I'll let you
I'll
ask it. See, it's okay.
well, I spent the first 20 years of my life being pretty unhealthy from physical, mental, emotional standpoint. And then I spent the next 10, 15 years kind of fixing all of that stuff and getting to a place where I'm the happiest, healthiest version I've ever been. Um, but it was, maybe 6 years ago, my co-host and I, Jeremy, we were having these vulnerable conversations, and men don't have, vulnerable conversations to talk about their feelings, emotions, and what they're struggling with. But we were, and at one point we decided, like, we don't hear men having these conversations. So we decided to kind of just put it all out there, start a podcast and start having these conversations, but also bringing in experts who, knew things about the topics we were talking about, meditation and mindfulness and mental health and anxiety, depression, things like that. So that's kind of where it started, was just us trying to get out there and help the community, because we've done so much to heal ourselves mentally and physically, that we really just wanted to get back to the community and kind of break that stigma that guys can't talk about mental health and their emotions and things like that.
And did you know Jeremy from before? Jeremy's co-host, everyone. So in case you don't know, here we have Zach, and hopefully we'll get to meet Jeremy another time. But did you know, like, how did you know? How long beforehand do you know him, and like, where did you meet him?
Yeah, so our wives actually were pregnant at the exact same time, and they met in a Fit Moms group. And both Jeremy and I love Star Wars, and we both love podcasts. So like our wives were like, we should go to a brunch. We should like introduce these guys. So we met about 12 years ago, just
Wow.
at a brunch, and just developed our friendship over time. And now he's one of my best friends. He's the guy I turn to for everything. And we started the podcast like 5 years ago. So I had known him for quite a while before we started.
Wow, so you're doing the podcast for 5 years. Like before it was a trend of COVID to like be doing podcasts, but I actually been doing it beforehand.
Yeah. Yep. So Jeremy actually had been doing podcasts for almost 15, 20 years. He had another podcast with his brother, where they got drunk and kind of talked about, stupid, weird things that happened in their lives. It was a really good podcast and it was very funny. But then Jeremy went down the road of like getting healthy and kind of dealing with some mental demons. So that show wasn't really appropriate for him anymore. So he's been podcasting forever. And that's actually when I went to him when that show ended, and I was like, hey, we should do one. And he was like, nope, absolutely not. I don't want to get on a microphone and talk about this stuff. Like, I'm no expert. But that's when he realized, and I realized too, that like we don't have to be the expert in these conversations. We just have to be the person who's like just up around the bend, right? Talking to the person who's just behind us and trying to like go down these roads.
Yeah,
So
you're
that's
sharing your personal experiences. Like, right, you're not like saying, oh, I have a PhD in this. You're just like sharing your experience. And then, like you said, you bring on experts also. So you do get that expert perspective.
yep.
But let's get into this a little bit. Overthinking. Let's just like put it out there first. Like, what's your perspective on people overthinking, specifically when it comes to business?
Yeah. So one of my great gifts in life is anxiety. So I have a really high level of anxiety. So I overthink everything. Like there's nothing in the world that I don't overthink. Unless I'm in like an emergency situation. So, which is weird because in like these crisis situations at work, I feel really good because I don't have time to overthink anything. I don't have time to be anxious. So it's very good for me. Um, but the overthinking part is for me anyway, it's very detrimental. Like there's a certain point where you weigh all of your options. You need to look at things holistically. What if we do this? What if we do that? And then pick a course and go down that road. But then there's that that point where you aren't making a decision. You aren't taking the next step forward. You aren't doing the next right thing because you're still trying to weigh all these options. Um, it's I mean, everyone does it, right? Some
Yeah.
people do it more than
I
others,
want to
but
talk about that point specifically because, like, as a brain coach, one of the things that I help entrepreneurs with is improve how they think and process information so that way making decisions is easier and they like come quick. And part of it is, yes, stopping and thinking to make sure you have the right information so that way you can make a good decision. But like you said, there comes a point where you're not thinking about it anymore. You're overthinking about it. So
Yeah.
how do we know we're at that point?
Well, I guess deadlines are one of the things, right? If you've got something that you need to do that there's a deadline on, you missed the deadline, you overthought it. I do like to put deadlines on things, even if they don't have deadlines, because that actually gives me an indication that something's wrong with the way I'm making my decision here. Um, and there for me, there's it's taken a long time to really recognize, but like there is a feeling of being paralyzed and moving forward on something, right? Looking at that, like I would almost experience, like recognize when you're overthinking something and let yourself continue to overthink on that particular one so you can learn that feeling, so you can know what it feels like, so you know that you've reached that point, and then all of your future decisions, you go look for that feeling. You be mindful of that feeling. So if you feel it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I overthought it. I just need to I need to pick and move.
What's that feeling like for you specifically?
So for me, I really start to feel like the world is when I'm thinking about whatever it is that thing is, I really do feel like this like unwinding of the world, like a meteorite's gonna hit, like that. This sense of dread comes over me. Um, for me, and it's gonna be different for everyone, but like that's my feeling. Like I just feel like if I looked out the window, I'd see an asteroid hitting the Earth, and we're all done. Like it's just that bottom of my stomach dread that something terrible is about to happen when I'm thinking about that thing. So that's I pay attention to that. If I ever do feel that, then the next thing I do, and this is actually something I do before I overthink sometimes. Actually, most of the time is I ask myself, okay, if I make this decision, can I reverse it? Is this permanent? Right? That solves it all the time, right? If the answer to that question is yes, you can reverse it. You can, you know what? If you made the wrong choice, you can just come back and you can try again. Then it makes it so much easier to just go, oh, you know what? We're going to try this. And if it fails, we're going to come back and try a different way.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Like most mistakes, like we could like figure something else out afterwards and like doesn't like ruin everything in lives. But mistakes do have like there's a payoff for it. Like it could be money, it could be time, it could be energy. Like, does it always work for you? Like you sometimes think like, but I invested $10,000. I'm like, or even not so much money. It's like, okay, I wasted 3 months working on this project and like now it's not working.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that you do waste, you do waste time, you do waste money. But I always try and look for the learnings, right? There's always some value in it, right? Um,
School
there
of
was
life.
one,
Exactly.
yeah, there is one project that we started the project, we started going down the road, and about 3 months in, it was really clear that we made the wrong choice. Like this is not going to work. Like we need to go back to square one and really redo it all. But all the things we learned along the way, like the next decision, it's gonna have similar things. It's gonna have, maybe some of the same tools. It's gonna have some other inflection points that you're gonna have to make. You literally have 3 months of experience to draw on. So your next decision is gonna be a lot better. But at some point, when you've made the wrong choice, you just have to own it and say, I made the wrong choice. Yes, we lost money. Yes, we lost time. But continuing down this path is going to make it even worse and worse and worse and worse. Cut your losses, come back to the beginning, use the lessons you learned, and make a better decision.
Oh gosh, I love that so much. There's like so many points that you touched on that like you have to unpack. First off, we have like the growth mindset part of like not worrying about the mistake, right? Because then we start overthinking about the mistake. Like, or if we make this decision and then the payoffs of it, like the overthinking just goes on even more. And like
Yep.
you said, right? Like we're just learning from it. and we're focusing on the process of it versus the actual outcome. But I think what else is also really interesting and even more interesting to me is what you said about how we learn from this situation and we afterwards help us into the next situation, right? So many times we feel like we're like doing something and it's like our first time we're doing this because it really is the first time we're doing this specific activity,
Hmm.
but it's not really the first time we're doing it because we have our entire life experience that we're building on to help us do this activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time you fail, it builds that experience. It builds that knowledge base. It builds so later on, like you're going to make better and better and better decisions. So it's such an interesting thing to think about because I hate failing. I can't stand doing something imperfect. I want to do it right the first time, no matter what. But I'm human. I'm gonna do it wrong. I'm gonna fail. And I have to quickly own it. But to your point, like you have to find value in all of these things. And not only did you figure out a way not to do it, you also just added to your experience, to the value you're going to bring to the next thing. So like just be happy, be grateful that you get to go do the next thing at all, right?
Yeah, and that's like part back of that growth mindset of it. Like every part of like what I do like with people is like helping them um bridge the strategies that they have helped them in the past or from random activities into new activities. And this is like such a clear example of like how we actually do it sometimes without even realizing, right? Like you've learned lessons when you were 5, when you were 12, and when you're 25 that is helping you make all your decisions that you now make better now. I want to go back for a minute, back to those deadlines. How do you decide what's a good deadline and like when to make that deadline if there's no real deadline and you're the one making the deadline?
Yeah. So I actually draw really heavily on something called the Eisenhower matrix. I don't know. Have you heard of this?
Yes, yes, but let's share for people who haven't.
Okay. So the Eisenhower matrix is made up of you categorize all of your tasks, all of your things that you have to do by its is it important or not important, and is it urgent and not urgent. And based on just those two categories, if something is urgent and important, you do it right now. You drop everything else, you do it right now. If it's important but not urgent, you schedule it. You put it on your calendar, you make sure you make time for it because that thing that's not urgent is going to become urgent someday and you don't want to be there. If it is urgent but not important, that's when you want to delegate it to somebody else where it would be important to them, maybe, right? So if you are a boss and you've got people that you manage, maybe something that's not important to you would be important to them. Um, and then there's the wonderful bucket of not important, not urgent. Those are the things that you delete. But I also say those you want to delegate too, because the same rule applies. If it's not important to me, it might be important to somebody else and worthy of going on their schedule. So those are delete or get rid of it. So based on where those things are in those boxes, right? If something is urgent and important, well, there's my deadline. Do it right now. If something is important but not urgent, right? I'll give myself a couple of weeks on it. Um, maximum 2 to 3 weeks. If it's not important, not urgent, well, that one's going to get like 2 months or something like that. So, like, based on where it falls on the importance and urgency level, like, I'll just give it a little bit more time, a little bit more time. And if it
Yeah,
falls
I
off
think
of my calendar, that's okay too.
yeah, right? Like I think the parts that people struggle with most is where they have to like they want to do the urgent things, right? Like someone's calling them and it's not really important, but it's urgent because the phone is ringing right now, so that's urgent. And like having to say like just because it's urgent if it's not important, like I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
And then right, and then the importance but not urgent becomes important. And technically that is really where you want to be spending your most time. You want to be taking all those important things and scheduling them out in advance so things don't come urgent. Obviously, life happens and there will be emergencies, so there will be important and urgent. But try to reduce that bucket as much as possible and just be doing important things without having like the craziness and the pressure of something being urgent.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Like you want to spend the the majority of your time working on that important, not urgent box. Like that's the sweet spot. And if you've got things in the other boxes, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. So how how do you use this timetable, like this way of dividing things, not to set deadlines so you're not overthinking? Like, let's just like tie it all back together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really does come down to like, um, again, depending on the task too, right? So there's the deadline, but what is the thing, right? Do I have to do something? Do I really have to pick, one direction or another? I think that's really where it comes down to it. If it's just doing something easy or some task you have to do, um, scheduling, it's not a problem. You just go and do it. It's really those moments of I have to make a decision A or B, D or E, right? Those are the problematic ones, and I will literally block out time on my calendar that just says, like thinking time, and just sit back, make sure like everything is off, nothing is on, and just kind of play through the scenarios in a healthy way. But when that meeting's over, like that I've set for myself for that, that's the moment. Like the meeting's over, the decision is done. Like whichever one I've got is at the end of that meeting the way I'm gonna go. It's
So you made that deadline for yourself. Yeah.
yeah. And I literally have it on my calendar, all these little like thinking time, thinking time, thinking time. And I'm making a decision, I'm making a decision. And at the end of the hour, when I've got to go to my next meeting, I need to have that one wrapped up. So
Yeah, and actually, like a lot of the top entrepreneurs, business owners, like multi-billionaires and whatever, they schedule in their week every single week like an hour or two or more just to think, and they do like all their thinking then. So so that's pretty cool. Like I love how you do this. Do you like have like set thinking time and you think about everything, or do you create thinking times for specific decisions that you need to make?
I do both. So I actually have a block that hits twice a week for 2 hours at a time where I just think about everything. I've got this really cool like binaural beats headphones that flash lights in your eyes too, and I put that on just to like stimulate my brain a little bit. Uh, so I have 2 sessions for 2 hours where I just think about everything, and
I
I've got a
love that.
whiteboard next to me, and I'm just writing things down and getting it out of my brain. And then on critical decisions, like I'll schedule a half an hour, wherever I need to in order to focus on that one little thing.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna bring that back to cognitive functions for a minute for to the 28 thinking skills. He Zach is using his 28 thinking skills during this thinking time. It's not just like sitting there and thinking about everything that's coming to his mind. Obviously, part of it is just like dumping out and processing it and the emotional part of it. But part of it, making the decisions, you need to be able to compare, collecting precise data. He needs to gather in the all information. And he's like literally taking the cognitive functions and using it like in the best way possible. It's awesome,
Oh
Zach.
wow! I'm just gonna pat myself on the back on for that.
Yeah. How long have you been scheduling these thinking times, thinking meetings with yourself?
Oh, it's been probably 7 or 10 years now that I do that.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so do you want to tell us where we could find you and hang out with you? Because also you're live on TikTok, and quite a few people have been really liking what you're saying and are like sending you lots of love multiple times and making sure that you're getting that message. So they really like it and they want to go and listen to you more. So your podcast is the Fit Mess Podcast.
Yep. So it's the fit mess, not fitness, but fit mess with an M because we're all humans. We're all messy. Things are really messy, but we try and be the fittest version of the mess we can possibly be. So thefitmess.com. And then we are on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, uh, at, at the Fit Mess Guys or at Fit Mess Guys, one or the other. I think we found a couple of platforms where somebody stole our name. We didn't like that, but we
That
we
is
post
not
pretty
fun.
regularly out there.
I'm so happy. Okay, well, thank you so much, Zach, for being here. This was really fun, and I really like your perspective on how you approach like the anxiety, the overthinking, and making sure you're making the right decisions.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff, and I really do geek out on it. So I'm happy to talk to you more whenever you want.
Awesome. Bye for now.